So if you say, okay, I knew that. I created these horrible parents to teach me what? But then Lazaris is saying, you don't need to create pain and struggle. You create your reality and you create the consequences of your reality. So first Lazaris is saying, you decided to have pain and suffering by choosing these parents. And then Lazaris, and it's like, well, when, where, who thought that was a good idea? Well, you did. You're confusing me, Lazaris. I don't have that memory. Well, we have the memory that you don't have. Just trust us on this. You do it, right? I've never met anyone that has that memory. Now, I've read and heard that a few people remember a few things before birth, but first you have Lazaris saying you chose all this suffering. And then Lazaris is saying you create your own reality and the results, and that it's easier to succeed than it is to fail. So he is not only ascribing these incredible powers, which, so, you know, so it's a complex equation here, right? Because on the one hand, Lazaris is saying, you create it all. On the other hand, he's saying, your nature is good. You're not an evil, rotten, horrible people. Your nature is good. You're all powerful. You create it all. And the you that is bigger than the you that you know now, that is powerful and blah, 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 chose to have these miserable parents, even though it was easier to succeed than it is to fail, even though they could have chosen competent parents, intelligent parents, traumatically literate parents, empathic parents, parents that liked themselves. They could have chosen that. You could have chosen that, right? It's not the you that you don't have any remembrance of other than Lazaris telling you. That you could have chosen that. But even though they love themselves and they're basically good, they didn't choose that for them to grow. But I thought you said, Lazaris, you create reality and the consequence of the reality. Why couldn't you have grown with a nice parent? Well, you didn't want to. Well, I thought you said we were basically good people. Why didn't we want to? And, you know, does this help, right? Does any of this help? Like, here's my body in this pain, in this shock, in this anxiety. Does any of this help? How? What's the path of response here so that for the next 40 years, I don't wake up in this biological landscape of fear? Now, if I do the Conquering Fear tape again, and the meditation again, and I still wake up this way, how do I feel? Do I feel better or do I feel worse? Well, it partly depends on the belief structure. If I say, you know, Lazaris, I think we could have a talk about this, and maybe you could integrate some traumatic data points that you never mentioned in any of the tapes. That could help, but Lazaris isn't doing that. So what Lazaris is saying is our techniques work, and if they don't work, you didn't want them to because you've got all of these nefarious payoffs, right? So part of the problem, if we look at another little meta of self-referential truths, meaning we are more than you, our techniques work. So you've already established a self-referential loop if you believe that. Now, if you don't believe that, it's not a very good basis for relationship, because then you say, I want you to pay me to be your friend for the next 30 years, but we're not more than you and our techniques don't work. I don't have to pay my other friends who aren't more than me and their techniques don't work. Why do I have to pay you to be my friend? Well, we are more than you and our techniques work and we love you more. And if they didn't work, you didn't want them to work. Well, then if you do ineffective techniques, it's because you didn't want them to work, and then it's your fault, and some part of you that you can't grasp easily is orchestrating that. And they could be doing a much better job, but they're not. And you're creating all this, but we, Lazaris, who are more than you, are not creating this. You are. That's a little bit of a tangle, right? And so let's see, I'm not reaching for the conquering fear tape. I'm reaching for the dialogue that is missing experience. Because this is actually talking about me and my experience of Lazaris, rather than being told what I know and don't know by another entity. I'm actually talking about what I know and don't know to somebody. If anyone watches this, then that's somebody that's listening. That isn't currently in my life, right? Because I don't know people that want to talk about this and want to listen to this. I haven't met them in the Lazaris community, and I haven't met them out of the Lazaris community. Now, I've paid therapists $140,000 to listen to some of this. And yeah, they will listen to whatever I want to tell them, at $100 or so an hour. But that's also a different experience, meaning, what's the message in there? The only people on the planet willing to listen to you are people because it's their job and you pay them $100 an hour. Otherwise, we're not interested. It's a pretty lonely message. So, I'm not a bad and unevolved person. I chose all this. I'm creating it moment to moment. There's wonderful techniques that work. They're just not working. And they're not working for you. And they're not working for your Lazaris lovers. And they're not working for your Lazaris clients. They're not working for your Lazaris healers. They're not working for a single user of Lazaris material that I know. And in some cases, they seem to be hurting. Like when somebody loses money in commodities over and over and over and over again, and then tries to do Lazaris techniques to get their winning streak, and they just keep losing money, and then they blame themselves for not being a good metaphysician because they're still losing money in commodities. That's the Lazaris friend approach. The rational approach is 80% of people in commodities lose money. Don't enter a betting arena where 80% of people lose and you have no control. Well, I create reality, right? Right? I decide whether the pork belly futures will go up and down because I control the weather because it's all my beliefs, right? So don't worry about it. I'm going to go to Vegas and I'm going to come away a winner because I believe Lazaris. How's it working? You see, and that's the missing piece. That's the big missing piece. How's it working? Is it working? It never has, never did, and isn't working for the commodity traders. What about in romantic relationship? Nope, it's not working there either. What about getting this fear out of my body? Well, this is working. What do I mean? I mean that confronting my fear. So what's the fear? Being judged, loneliness, etc. again, for telling unpopular truths, right? I knew what happened in my family when I pointed out that mom was lying, or dad was stealing, or dad was lying, or this was unfair. I knew that information wasn't welcome. It wasn't. And so there's the question. Do you put up with the abuse and pretend it's not happening so that the parent can participate in their delusion that they're great parents? Or do you get punished to step out of that delusion and force the parent to actually acknowledge that this is not a very ideal situation? Or you wouldn't need to hit me for pointing it out. So the past is over, right? Is that useful in this moment? Not to me. This seems to take a lot of complex patterns and biological things and pretend they're not there because a monologist channeled entity says it's not there. Now, Lazaris, in one of the, my last tape, other than the morning tape, was winning new tools to get what you really want. And he goes on quite a spiel for about 20 minutes about how the future creates your reality and how people have to really contort and see how the past creates the reality because it makes no sense. It's absurd. But people, if they really try, they can get the present to have something to do with their past, that it's really the future. So what's the problem here? Well, the first problem is you don't really have to contort to see how the past creates the present. 3 years ago, I fell down the stairs and broke my elbow, and I can't open it. That's the future creating that. It's not the past. I have a future with a broken elbow, and that's why I can't move my elbow in the present. It's not the fact that I fell down the stairs and that surgery today is not able to fully restore the length with 10 bolts in my radial head holding them together. No, that's not the issue at all. It's the future. And we have to really stretch to not see that, right? I mean, this is complete and utter nonsense. The past has given up its grip. Lazaris, why don't you erase this surgery? I bought this in the past. It didn't actually just magically appear on here. And I bought a new chain for it in the past. And I put it on in the past. And here it is. This is not here because of the future. So Lazaris talks about the problem of either-or thinking. It's this or it's this, but really it's both. And I agree with Lazaris. But what's Lazaris doing with this past-future dynamic? Why can't it be both, Lazaris? Why can't it be the past and the future create the present? Why does it have to be either-or when it so clearly isn't? Where's the chauvinism that says it's all about the future? Rather than, no, it has nothing to do with the past. The fear in your body developed since birth, that has everything to do with the future. It has nothing to do with the past. And this broken arm in your bank account, that's reflection of the work that you did in the past. No. That's a reflection of the work you're going to do in the future. This is nuts. But in a monologue, nuts can take on a life of its own. In a monologue, these things, Lazaris doesn't do a raise of hand. Hey, Does anyone have any evidence of the past influencing, creating their life right now? Yes, every one of us. Every single one of us. The clothes we're wearing that we bought in the past. You go to a Lazaris event, and they say, where's your ticket? You're not on our list. And I say, yeah, but I paid for it in the future. It's no longer about the past, concept synergy. It's about the future. I paid you so much money in the future. And so here I am in the present to attend the event that I'm going to pay for in the future. Even concept synergy, well, I guess I shouldn't say even concept synergy. Concept synergy disregards Lazaris material right and left in their protocols. But concept synergy doesn't care about what Lazaris says. They want the money in the past so that you can attend in the present. And if they don't have the record from the past, you don't get to show up to visit your friend who loves you more than you can know, but not enough to let you visit your friend for free or just for at cost. It's not that uncommon for a friend to say, let's split the bill. We'll go to a restaurant, we want to be together, and so we'll split the bill. So let's add up the cost of the hotel, and we'll just share that around. No, we want quite a good profit off of this friendship. And so, is that loving me more than I can imagine, or is that loving me less than I can imagine? See, because this is where the dialogue, hey, over here. I'm seeing a lot of stuff that doesn't add up here. For someone that talks about how crazy making the cult is, good job. But isn't this a bit crazy making as well? And if you get thrown out from the forum or whatever for talking about it, isn't that a little bit crazy making? Isn't that a little bit upsetting as well? Because in addition to Lazaris having no context to have a conversation like this in public or otherwise, concept synergy has no context for it either. Concept synergy copies Lazaris control protocol. Lazaris controls every aspect of the relationship, when it happens, where it happens, what the format is, what the price is. And then Lazaris, even if you do a private reading, I've done one private reading with Lazaris in which Lazaris said that my father gave me his fear. And in the shame tapes or whatever, Lazaris, says, give it back to the abuser. Well, in physical life, my father was never interested in listening or talking or hearing of any of this, and never did. If I made an effort, I was punished for it in a variety of ways that would just lead to feeling worse. If I try and talk with my family, there's a big denial pattern around all of this, so that doesn't work very well. How many dozens of times do you have to do the shame tapes before you wonder, well, maybe a cassette isn't the most effective way to heal biological trauma. Maybe Lazaris made a mistake and he naturally hasn't corrected it because he doesn't gather feedback, claiming to have access to everyone's unconscious mind. Well, there's a lot of circular stuff here that goes around. And I wouldn't call a lot of it more love than I can possibly imagine, because I can imagine a lot, beginning with free friendships. I won't charge you money to be your friend, and you don't charge me. And if you can create universes, I'm sure there's plenty of people, you could call them martyrs, they might call themselves generous people, who would volunteer an hour a day to channel Lazaris, and we could actually have friendships. I'll channel Lazaris for you, and you channel Lazaris for me, and we'll have dialogues, real intimate friendships based on consciousness and words, not a mysterious energy that is more than you can put into words. Because I can put into words, Lazaris, read the book. Lazaris, respond to this video. I mean, Lazaris put out a very rare request for community questions. I asked a bunch, none of them were answered, right? So that's a pretty strong commitment for someone that doesn't have any time to not have enough time to answer a single question. That's also crazy making. We have no time for us, but we don't have enough time because we've only chosen to channel through one person who, when time is an illusion, doesn't have enough time either, right? These things are just nuts. So I would say that in terms of loneliness, here's how this works for me. I understand everything that I just said. I'm sorry, Dane, you had to go through all that. I'm sorry you are going through that. And I'm sorry, based on Lazaris protocols, you're still going to go through that because loving me more than I can imagine doesn't include a response to this. Well, I reject that insanity and stupidity and that shame. I reject the abusive and unhelpful comments that a me that I've never met in a memory I don't have made ridiculous choices I can't do anything about. That's not helpful. So back to you, Lazaris. You say you know that, then presumably with the ability to create universes, if I don't want to know that I know it, then don't tell me. And if I do, help out, right? Don't just give me something to carry that I can't do anything with. So I would say that I can be a little bit of a better friend to myself and have a little bit more of a sense of humor. Like, a lot of this is just nonsense. And I can have compassion for myself. There isn't a lot of verbalized love in our cult. And the verbalized love often doesn't correlate with actual feelings of being loved. Right? Gertrude kept telling me how much she loved me while blocking all of the feelings and data points that would allow the love to be real, right? Well, Lazaris is, in their way, doing a similar thing. So, the best thing that I can say is that having a fear tape, it acknowledges that fear is a big issue, and it's one of the biggest in my life. I have lived and largely live in biological terror. I would say 40 to 60% of my life consists of preparing to be hit, waiting to be hit, trying to avoid being hit, and expecting and freezing that I'm going to be hit, and feeling completely helpless to do anything about it, and feeling disoriented and feeling like I'm 5 years old. That's going on all the time. So how does it show up? Adrenal collapse and exhaustion, chronic fatigue, difficulty sleeping. 20 to 30% of my energy is compulsive. Whatever I'm doing it frenetically as opposed to being in presence. Feel highly depressed that I can't get out of this constant anxiety that waits like a big, it's like a car resting on me. It's hard to move, it's hard to hold the car. I'm afraid it's going to fall down. It's very heavy. And so, Lazaris did a tape that said that is worth talking about. Well, that's better than anyone else, right? You didn't talk to me about it. Lazaris did. Now I had to buy a tape, but it's better than nothing. 2, meditation, the ideas, somewhat useful, unhelpful. All fear is a belief that is faulty. That's just led me round in circles very unhealthily. I've never changed. See, if I believe that nobody is going to hurt me in the ways that I've been hurt, I instantly feel anxious and panic because my body knows that's a lie. So if I tell myself nobody's out to hurt me, my body says, Dane, you're going backwards. You pretended no one wanted to hurt you before and you got hurt. Then you acknowledged people wanted to hurt you and you figured it out. And you've gotten out how to avoid it. But how are you going to avoid them hurting you if you start lying again and pretend that nobody wants to hurt you? That's going backwards, right? So where's the faulty belief, right? So you can go round and round and round, or you can just say, okay, I'm doing a pretty good job these days of not being hurt. Again, pretty good job, not a great job, not a very good job, pretty good. And many days feel like, oh, I got through that without being hurt. I got through that without being hurt. That's where I am, after, more than 30 years of Lazaris, right? So, shame, some good stuff there, other than that it's alienating because nobody wants to talk about it. You don't want to have a conversation with me about shame. Nobody else does that I've met. And so it's pretty heavy and brings up some anxiety to go into the terrain, etc. But I listen to the tapes, I try this and that and the other, and then I also, like when I wake up feeling shame, which is quite common, I'm gonna get trouble. I'm gonna be found out. I'm gonna be hit. I'm not gonna be good enough. All these biological sensations going through my body. When I think, hey, let's pause here and do the shame tape, my anxiety goes up. Why? Well, first of all those feelings and thoughts usually come up when I've got a lot going on. So I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to make a mistake, and I'm going to be punished, right? So I've got this and this and this and this, and it's too much to all control and manage, and so I'm expecting to be hit. And that means that day I do not have time for the shame tape. So I have done that at times. I've said, no, I'm going to do the shame tape. My reality is an illusion. I finish the tapes. I get tighter and tighter as I'm listening to the tapes, and my life has fallen apart because rather than grim and bear it and getting the things done, I've done the shame tape. Lazaris technique's working, not particularly. So not only that, but when I've had lots of time and done the shame tape, often I go numb and dissociate. Because I have payoffs, or because Lazaris isn't talking about trauma, or what? Apparently I'm creating all that for mysterious reasons. It's not helpful. And I've done forgiveness meditations, I've done this and da-da-da-da-da. living in a regressed, traumatized state, expecting to be hit by a sociopathic, narcissistic mother, the forgiveness meditations and all that, I don't think they touch the parts of my body that need to be touched for there to be a change. So I just feel I don't do the technique right. So there's Lazaris shaming me again, not grasping that I need some help here that I'm not getting, that there is nothing fundamentally wrong with my nature. But yes, severe physical and psychological abuse in isolation leaves a lasting pattern in the brain. And a paid escort or a paid mentor who isn't a mentor, who's really your friend, let's add some craziness, right? If Lazaris just says, we know a few things, not everything, but see what works, and we're going to charge you because we want to. So here it is. That's not shaming, but all this other stuff is. We're not a teacher, we're just going to monologue to you. That's crazy. If you're not a teacher, shut up and listen, right? Pay attention. If you're a friend, dialogue and don't charge your friend for presents, right? It doesn't seem too hard, right? But no, we love you more than you can imagine. You imagine that, but we love you more than that, which you don't like. But do you really want to give up more love? That's crazy making. That isn't love. That's dictation. This is the way it's going to be, or we're not relating to you, right? So there's grief around that. There's pain around that because there's no answer to this, right? Lazaris is not going to reply to this. They never have in 47 years. Why start healthy dialogue and of understanding now? If concept synergy replies, and then you have to kind of doubt a little bit, like the Christian thing where God must have a mysterious plan. Like this is part of Lazaris' commitment for me being more of an adult, right, and not placating my negative ego. Lazaris is not dialoguing and charging me for friendship for my own good. He's got a plan, right? This is part of Lazaris' love for me. That's why God took my newborn child and as part of God's infinite plan to test my faith so that I could All this stuff is nuts, and I'm not going to call that love. Nuts is a good placeholder for now, but a healthy person can dialogue with this. The best psychologists and therapists that I find will just say this is nuts and dismiss Lazaris. However, that's not as easy when Lazaris has been your main companion in isolation since teenage years, right? Have I been a complete fool for spending all this time and money doing this? If I'm a complete fool who did all this for no gain, just to go round in circles so that some channel could make a bunch of money getting out of the way, then what's my next plan? Because I'm a complete fool. So my next plan is not going to be much better. You see, that's the problem. These are the systems of belief that have to be worked with. If Lazaris doesn't work and here and here and here, and it's the best around, then there's no hope. If there's much better around, but I chose to work, I was a fool for doing this, then the fool has to make the next decision, which is likely to be just as bad because I'm a fool, right? So there's lots of of circular references around all of this. And I can just say that, that hearing that somebody loved me was useful, even if it's not at all what optimal love looks like to me. The thought stimulation, learning to think, is a certain way of overcoming paralysis, and Lazaris certainly helps with that, because when you get hit for existing and hit for protesting the hitting, and hit is a trauma and there's no support for that, it's just paralyzing. So the question is how to get out of that paralysis. The Lazaris said in another thing that action was a response to fear, and I think I've heard that somewhere else, but if you're afraid, take action. I've done a lot of that, and I can get the outer reality to work just fine. One of the survival tactics of someone who is dealing with dishonest abusers is you ignore what they say and you start noticing patterns, and you say, oh yeah, when this happens, and this happens, you get hit. So that it develops a pattern analyzing talent in order to survive. Well, that pattern can be used in all kinds of areas. And so I can very easily manipulate a great life, but I can't lift the fear, right? So it becomes more of a joke, meaning to have everything, quote unquote, the sex, the money, the location, the body, the freedom, the travel, the things, the time, the crystals, whatever the little tokens are of, that's the successful life. To have all of that and to wake up in dread and fear, expecting to be hit, being lied to, having people tell me, they don't ask, do you have everything? How do you feel? No, that would be intimate. They tell me how wonderful my life is. It's sickening, because it's like all that I've gotten for, quote, being successful is more invisible. Before people turn away, they're like, I know you're in pain and I don't want to deal with it, and so I'm turning away and I apologize. I feel a bit guilty, but I'm still not going to help you deal with it. To, oh, how wonderful it is. You're so successful. You're so smart, so successful. I feel exhausted, feel lonely, feel enraged, feel invisible, feel lied to, and like there's nothing I can do to get out of the maze. And that's what 30 years of Lazaris has brought and not brought. And I would say that I see the same thing in the Lazaris community, which is both maddening and comforting, both. It's like, do you mean to say, Lazaris, that you've just sat there talking and monologuing for 47 years and you didn't pay attention to anyone in there, what they were going on and what's actually going on? You just told everyone what of a map maker they were and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And you just told them how great they were and how great and successful they were and all this stuff. You just told them that. You didn't actually listen to any of them? I mean, that's quite a joke. It's quite a pull-off, right? So it's maddening. So what do I do? Am I a fool for listening to this? Or, on the other hand, it's comforting. It's like Lazaris was saying, I really have to fix this. I keep forgetting to make that recording longer. My hair is getting thinner every year from this panicky anxiety. My body gets more and more numb every year from this panicky anxiety. My level of exhaustion goes up due to this panic and anxiety. And my sense of the future, like, I dreamed those brilliant futures and this and that and the other, and they didn't happen. This happened. Lazaris says, if you put it in the future, it has to come back. Where is it, right? But of course, you have to receive it, right? You didn't do that right. We created you as a figment of our imagination, not doing it right, and then we created us telling you that you're not doing it right. Then we created us telling you that it would have been easier to do right than not. And then we created you feeling miserable and lonely about it because we create our impact as well as this. And then we just left you there because we like you to suffer, right? And then we find it amusing. We laugh because, why are you doing it so hard? Why didn't you do this and this, right? Well, that's your good friend Lazaris. So, I would say at best it's a complicated relationship. Some things have worked. Healing the inner child, I mentioned, and healing the adolescent. Probably did 300 hours of that meditation connecting series. I really felt a difference. That's the one big pocket of development. However, what I look at is this. There's plenty of kids far more traumatized than I am, far more abused than I am, with way less resources than I have. If I want to kill myself based on this level, what about them? And I can pretend they're all illusions. That doesn't work for me. What about them? And if Lazaris techniques don't work for me, what about them? And if I have Lazaris techniques and they don't, what about them? That's painful. I want to respond. I'm ineffective. That's painful. I can't protect my siblings. I can't protect my own body from these abuse dynamics. Now, to ask myself what payoffs I'm getting for being, more and more numb, more and more chronic, exhausted, blah, 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 blah. I've never gotten much out of that. I've gone through all that processing and programming. I've never gotten much out of it. There is a very large well of grief that I feel that the most feminine and beautiful parts of myself are routinely overstepped, violated, ignored, trampled on, and people get uppity if I try and say, hey, why are you doing this to this feminine side in here? Because it's invisible. It's like I'm being rude and unreasonable for actually giving some validity to my feminine self. It hurts because they're doing the exact same thing to themselves. It hurts a lot. There's too much pain to feel alone. And in a cult that wants to have a positive attitude and this and that, this pain, I'm left to feel it alone. Nobody I know wants to feel it with me. Perhaps the addictive and adrenaline, anxiety and fear feels safer than going into this amount of pain. I haven't been taught to heal fear, and I haven't been taught to heal this pain. I've done the pain tapes. It's scary getting near all that pain. In the complex PTSD and shame and humiliation, it feels very lonely to go into those feelings. Nothing has changed much to stop or change that dynamic. I feel very alone here. And I'm afraid of getting near those feelings. As often as I try to do so, they get worse, or other people make them worse if I try to talk about it. We are an emotionally illiterate culture. So there's not a lot of people who have the competence to connect with this identity and bring about healing. I don't have that competence to do more than I have, and I've done a lot for tens of thousands of hours. It's just not touched either the deepest pain, the deepest loneliness, or the continual frenetic anxiety as infants and children ages, terrified out of their wits, expect to be hit by people that enjoy their suffering. I don't find it helpful to be told that I chose that. And not be able to do anything about it. You know, Lazaris says, if you don't own it, you can't do anything about it. Yeah, but why don't you do something about it, Lazaris, and own it? Give an example. I'm not seeing the transcendent Lazaris friends that aren't dealing with any of these things. I'm not one of them. So there's a lot of pain here, and it needs to be sensitively and caringly responded to. And not a lot of people have the skill to do that towards their own pain or mine, and so here we are. I refuse to take it on that it's all my fault. That the fault of the beliefs is all mine, the fault of the skills is all mine, that Lazaris has nothing to do with it, that the ecology has nothing to do with it. To the extent there is a fault, it is a shared fault. To the extent there is incompetence, there is shared incompetence. You don't know how to deal with this in me. But as a cult, are quick to judge and humiliate me for not knowing how to deal with it in me either. It's not a problem with the individual. The problem is in the cult. The problem is in the cult identity and its determination to avoid its inadequacies by shaming the individual. An individual can come into just about any cult and will eat whatever they eat, will talk the way they talk, will wear the clothes they wear, will take on the dominant memes and thoughts and attitudes. So if there is some part up there that's choosing which cult to be a part of in which time, I haven't met that part. Nobody I have has met them either. And so here we are with a muddle and a channeled entity who has infinite amount of time but doesn't have time to talk about this to me. and who says that you and I are creating our own reality, but they apparently aren't. So that's the kind of the placeholder, me and my relationship with Lazaris around the terrain of fear.